So 8:30 off we go, Tuesday morning, and I was so pleased that you managed to catch this lovely sunrise here. So you can see the sun just rising behind the Cathar Castle, the Aguilar Castle, which is just outside Tuchon. So let's just have a look around. It is a wonderful sunrise, Joe. It was absolutely magnificent. And just turning around here, so I'm turning now towards the Roussillon direction. And here, lovely clouds, just a big blanket of clouds. And just below that, you can see the snow-capped mountains of the Pyrenees. So that's the Canigou, the foothills of the Pyrenees. And it's got lovely snow on the top. It rained all weekend, so this probably is fresh snowfall from the weekend. The Canigou, just in the Roussillon. In front of that is a little village of Paziol, and Tuchon. You can't actually pick out Tuchon this morning, but it's just down the road there. And then panning around as the sun rises, look at this cloud, it's just lovely, blankets of it. And you can see the Totteval Tower. So that's the Totteval Tower in the background. That's above the town of Totteval, surprisingly enough. And that's a beacon. So that's a beacon that was used to communicate between the Cathar castles of Aguilar and Péripatus. I'm going to pan around quickly because the sun is just coming up here. Wow, so the sun over there, direction of the Mediterranean. So here in about an hour's drive from Tuchon, and it's absolutely lovely drive around all the wiggly roads. It takes you right down to the Mediterranean and down to the villages of Fitou, La Palme, Le Cat, La Franquie. And you also go through Portel, if James, you're with us this morning, Portel et Corbière. So the 11th century Cathar Castle of Aguilar. And here you can see a lone tractor driver working in the vineyard. That's actually Michel. So we're going to catch up with Michel in a moment and find out what he's up to. And we're in one of Jean-Marc's vineyards this morning. And then panning around this direction is the rest of the Languedoc and Narbonne. So mainly Narbonne in this direction, about an hour's drive. And then, panning around up here is Carcassonne direction, but a lot of Garrigue before you get to Carcassonne. So Garrigue, the natural landscape here. And full circle round back to the Canigou, and then just let's have one more look at this wonderful sunrise this morning. Wow, it's just absolutely beautiful. So we're going to go and catch up with Michel, and on the way we're just going to have a little bit of our history to find out where we got to. So when we're talking history, we actually got up to the end of the 1800s. So the end of the 1800s, between 1840 and 1890, it was really the boom time for planting vines. In Tuchon vineyards, it became a commercial crop, and the number of hectares went from 800 up to 2,000, almost 2,000 hectares just in the village of Tuchon. So it was the golden era of wine, but then it all went a bit wrong. And we came into a situation at the beginning of the 1900s of overproduction. So overproduction, but not just a bit, it was like massive overproduction. So why was there this massive, so much wine about? Well, unfortunately, wine drinking slumped. So people were actually drinking less wine at the beginning of the 1900s. They were discovering beer and cider in France, so that took away some of the wine drinkers. Also, there were big imports. So imports from Algeria, Italy and Spain, which in actual fact France had welcomed when they were replanting because of phylloxera. But then when their vineyards were back in production, they were still had these imports coming in that flooded the market. But they were actually quite thankful for Algerian imports in particular, because when they replanted the vineyard in the Languedoc, they actually replanted with very high yielding grape varieties to cater for what they thought would be the demand. So they planted high yielding grape varieties like Aramon and Carignan. And Aramon in particular, very high yields, but not a very nice quality of wine. So they actually used the imports from Algeria that came into the port of Sète to make the wines better. So they would mix Algerian wines with the wines from Languedoc that were made from these high-yielding, poor-quality grapes to make a quality-ish wine. So imports, that didn't help. Decline in drinking as well. The fake wines, we talked about the fake wines last time. So we had people making fake wines and making fake wines. Morning, Diane. Hi, Diane. Oh, hi, Mum and Dad. Good to see you. We're just talking about fake wine, so we're just talking about why there was overproduction in wine at the beginning of the 1900s. So basically imports from Algeria and also decline in people drinking wine, and also the fake wines that I mentioned before. So fake wines, people started making wine from dried grapes, from raisins, imported from Greece and Turkey, and also from the lees, from the byproducts of the wine. So they would just add water and sugar, and they were called vin de sucre, or sugar wines. So people started making fake wines as well. They only actually represent about 5% of production, but because of the way they were made, that's what people sort of got really annoyed about with the fake wines, and that there was no control, absolutely no control by the government on how you could produce wines. So fake wines were actually legal at the time, and also just adding water to wine and mouillage as well was pretty common. And on top of that, on top of those reasons, in 1904, for a couple of years, they had the biggest harvest they had ever seen in France. So on top of already a bad situation, the vineyards had all come back into production after phylloxera. They'd replanted high-yielding vines to be able to make enough money to do the replanting, because it was expensive. So in order to do that, they planted high-yielding vines as well. And they came into big harvest after 1904. 1904, 1905, 1906. The harvest actually doubled in size in France. So they got double what they were getting in 1903. So because of oversupply, drop in demand, so they had a bit of a wine glut, a bit of a wine lake, and the price of wine just collapsed. And that meant that growers were poorly paid, and the growers that were poorly paid weren't happy about it and went on strike. So they went on strike, and they asked for 3 conditions to be improved: that their working day was only 8 hours, that they got half a franc more per hour, and perhaps more importantly, they got 2 litres of wine a day free for when they were working. That actually still exists today. Workers get 2 litres of wine a day. So that's what they went on strike for, and they were actually successful, as is often the case in France, and they got their demands. And but that didn't actually sort out the problem of overproduction. And by 1907, it had become really, really critical. The workers weren't being paid, the owners couldn't make enough money. There was a whole harvest, the 1904 harvest, they just couldn't sell at all. So by 1907, it had become critical. The situation was awful, really, really bad. And so they decided to start demonstrating. So just to give you an idea here, the first viticultural demonstration in 1907 was in March, and there were 100 growers. So they managed to get 100 growers together to go and march. The 12th of May, 2 months later, there were 150 people in Béziers, vignerons, just wine growers, that went to demonstrate. And later that month, the 20th of May, there were 180,000 people in Perpignan that demonstrated about the poor conditions, the overproduction, and basically the fake wines. They blamed it mainly on fake wines, although that wasn't the main cause of the problem. So on the 20th of May, 180,000 people gathered in Perpignan. And when you think the population of the PO, of the Pyrénées-Orientales, where Perpignan is, was only 210,000 people, and they had 180,000 people that gathered in Perpignan to demonstrate. It was really gathering speed. And on the 25th of May, in Carcassonne, 250,000 people. And on the 9th of June, 600,000 people in Montpellier. So really gathering speed, really not happy. And on Thursday, I will tell you more about the riots that happened. But I've been just finding out about Touchon and how Touchon was involved in these demonstrations. And in actual fact, the whole village was involved in it. So the whole village would actually go and join in these demonstrations in Perpignan in particular. So when they knew they were going to demonstrate, the day before they'd prepare the carts, because they went on carts, horse-drawn carts. So they prepare the carts, they get the picnic ready, they get the food ready with the picnic, and they get some wine together, and they get about 15 people per cart, and they'd all get prepared, and then they go to bed really early, because at midnight, Sylvester Moustaki would get his trumpet out and he would walk the streets of Touchon blowing his trumpet to wake everybody up. So they all got in the carts. It would take about 5 hours. Boop, boop, boop. It would take about 5 hours to get to Perpignan. And then when they got to Perpignan, it was all really organised. They would have their camp, the Touchon camp, and that's actually where Nouvelle Gallery is today. So they were camped just by the Castillet, and they would, so 5 hours journey, they'd get there, they'd light a bonfire, cook a bit of food, and then they would wait until they could actually demonstrate. But it's all really organised for thousands of people and hundreds of horses as well. So the pompiers gave the horses big buckets to drink from, but a really organised demonstration. But it all sort of ended in disaster, and I'll be telling you about the disaster on Thursday. But on those, when the village of Touchon went down to Perpignan, they had Jean Belissens, who would lead the procession with his drum. So a younger boy leading the procession with his gun, a lady holding a flag behind them, marching behind. And then behind that, Pujol had made an imitation coffin that they would carry, which would signify the death of viticulture. So it was really rebellious times. It was desperate times for the growers in the village of Touchon. And we'll see on Thursday exactly what happened in Narbonne on the 7th of June. No, not the 7th of June. On the 10th of June in 1907. So it just got a little bit distracted by Michel, who's arriving here. So any questions? Thanks for the sound effect, yeah. Any questions you have, please put them in the little question box. And I'm just going to show Michel. I'm not going to get too close because Michel's actually top pruning. Mum and Dad, this is how you do it with the machine. So Michel's top pruning with the tractor. So we've got this machine on the front which has little blades that spin round, and Michel goes up and down most of the rows. Although I've just seen over there, those of you that follow me, there's still a pile of earth. So I don't think Jean-Marc's filled in the hole from the man who came to look at the soil. So let's have a look at Michel here, and we can see what he does. So, hi Michel, good to see you. So turn the machine on. I'm going to stand well back, and that goes either side of the wires. And he's off. And as it goes down the rows, it just cuts off the tops, and I can show you exactly what it does. So there's Michel off down the rows as the sun rises in Touchon. Oh, it's lovely. So this is what the machine does. So this is one that hasn't been top pruned here, so a bit straggly. I know we are all recognising this is the cordon de Roya method of training. Actually, I'm not sure it is. I think it's cordon de Roya method, but the bottom bit isn't on a wire. And here, so we've got a nice fennel plant here as well. Here's the fennel plant. And this is a vine before the machine has come. So we've got lots of branches. And then once Michel has been, this is what it looks like. So the branch is cut off here, which just makes it a lot easier for then Paula and Michel to come in, and Roger to come in and prune the tops off Oh, look at that sunrise, it's just absolutely beautiful. And there's a bit of a dew, we don't really get that down here, but this morning got dew. Oh, there's an empty bullet, somebody's been out trying to shoot those wild boars. So let's have a look at any questions here. Oh, and I'm going to ask you a question while I look at your questions, so before I do. Here is to win some dried herbs, some of the last packets of dried organic herbs from my vineyards. Can you tell me, the first person to put, how many litres of wine a day a worker now gets, thanks to those that went on strike at the beginning of the 1900s? So the first person to put on how many litres the daily allowance is 2 litres. Karen, congratulations, on the ball this morning. You've obviously had your cup of coffee. And to reply to the great variety, some of you were trying to guess. Vivian, close second. Janine, close second. 2. Auntie Jane, close second. Oh, yeah, 2. You all got that, but Karen got in there first. So the great variety here, I didn't mention it because, well, not because it's my husband's, but I forgot to mention actually, it's Carignan. So this is a Carignan vineyard that belongs to Jean-Marc that goes into his herbarium range of wines, Carignan. So it's about 25 years old, Carignan here. And for those of you who are trying to guess it, wow, I'm impressed. I wouldn't have a clue just looking at this. It's very difficult to tell. So you can tell by the colour of the branches. That would be one clue. So we can see that the branches here are dark brown. So here's a question from Bertie, the Schnoodle, woof woof, has a population of Touchon, so Touchon changed from those days? In actual fact, it hasn't changed that much. I'll have another look closely, but I believe that the population has stayed pretty much the same, and we're at about 900 people. I think it may have peaked to about 1,000, but the population was pretty much the same. But those 900 people actually lived in just the area around the church, so they just lived in the heart of the village, so in a much smaller area than the village now. So still around about 900 people in the village of Touchon. So Touchon, Tuchan, but I'm really pleased you wrote it like that because that's how I say to pronounce it. Touchon is number 2, and then shone, like the sun is shining here. Touchon. So it's been great to see you all this morning. Good to see you, Brad. If any of you have just joined us, then I'm just about to sign off, but you can see the video on IGTV and later on my YouTube channel. Don't forget my YouTube channel, Domaine Jones on YouTube, and you've got over 60 videos that you can look back at the whole growing season and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and it's Domaine Jones. Hi Quentin, good to see you. Brad, it is a wonderful morning here. It's been absolutely lovely. You're going somewhere, Brad? I missed it, but I'll catch up later. Have a good trip, Brad. Kissing Gate, I wonder where you are going. Debbie, good to see you. Vivian, excellent to see you as well. Kevin, Wine Lane. Yeah, the history is really fascinating, and like Mum and Dad will tell you, I never was very good at history at school, but now just learning all about how Touchon used to live, how the production of wine really ruled their lives and what they did, and it helps me as well understand how people react today in this area of southern France, with all the riots and the way they demonstrated. It's just really interesting, and I'm going to be looking at a bit more of it on Thursday, and I'll give you the final chapter in the 1907 riots. But yeah, I'm enjoying it too. Thanks, Melissa. Glad you found it interesting. Bye, Bailey Dog. Bye, everybody, and see you on Thursday. And yes, I'm going to drive in my new car. I'll tell you about that on Thursday as well.